Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Siboga TV, which is your number one online political channel. And today, I want to talk about Mount Kenya politics and where the people of Mount Kenya are actually going wrong and why Mount Kenya is not yet actually to produce a presidential candidate or a person who is going to step at the presidency and who is going to yield and become the president of this republic. And this, I think, it might happen within a duration of 10 years. And also, we will do an overview about the entire Mount Kenya politics as things are currently. But before we dive into that conversation, I could request you kindly to take a minute and you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Give this video a like, share the video to your friends. And if your friends are lovers of politics, then it's good to request them for us to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And for those ones who have actually subscribed to our YouTube channel, I say thank you, may God bless you, because you really give us the inspiration to continue coming up with this kind of political analysis. And lastly, if you want to become a full member of this YouTube channel, please hit the join button. And whenever you want to be notified with this YouTube channel, anytime we come up with any political content, then also you need to hit the join button. Having said that, let us now go back to the discussion of the day about Mount Kenya politics and where Mount Kenya politics is actually leading this nation. And the first thing we must know is that Mount Kenya is a fort-rich region. Because as you all understand, Mount Kenya is more than 25 to 30% producing forts in this nation. And that is the biggest region or forting block in this nation. And that is why you have been hearing people like Mutahi Ngunyi, they are talking about tyranny of numbers. And sometimes you hear people saying that you cannot neglect the forts of Mount Kenya if you want to become the president of this republic. And that scenario is actually representing its face on us. Because as you know, all those people who want to step at the presidency, they are at the doors of Mount Kenya. Every candidate wants to knock on the doors of Mount Kenya. Every person wants to embrace Mount Kenya. Let us start with the current sitting president, who was elected and who won the 2022 presidential election via the Mount Kenya politics after the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. And people never thought that Rigathi Gachagua was going to be such a powerful person in Mount Kenya after impeachment. But now, Rigathi Gachagua is very powerful. And people are saying that Rigathi Gachagua is now the kingpin of the mountain. But with all that happening, William Samoei Arap Ruto is very persistent, actually quoting Mount Kenya so that they can vote him again. Let come 2027. And that shows something. It shows that the votes of Mount Kenya are very crucial in the re-election of William Samoei Arap Ruto. Let us also move to Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka is also on the heart of Mount Kenya. And now, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka is calling the people of the mountain Kuzos. And by the aid of Rigathi Gachagua, now Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, they are working hand in hand with Rigathi Gachagua. Meaning that Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka understands very well that his bid towards 2027 presidential election will never amount to anything without Mount Kenya coming into his aid. And that is why we are saying that Mount Kenya politics is very crucial in the election of any presidential candidate. Let us also look at Fred Okengo Matiang'i, who is the deputy party leader of Jubilee. Fred Okengo Matiang'i wants actually to step at the presidency using Jubilee as a political party, majorly because Jubilee is a party associated with the people of Mount Kenya. And Jubilee, the head of that party, is not other than the former president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And because of that, Fred Okengo Matiang'i wants to override on that and is using that so that he can be re-elected or he can be supported by the people of Mount Kenya, because Fred understands very well that without the Mount Kenya voting bloc behind him, he is heading nowhere. He cannot win presidency, let come 2027. And that is what is happening. And also, if you look at Edwin Sifuna is also cutting the mountain. Edwin Sifuna is trying to align himself with Rigathi Gachagua. And why is he doing all that? He understands that the votes of Mount Kenya is very dearly to his political career. And therefore, in a nutshell, you cannot ignore the votes of Mount Kenya and you succeed. Now, let us now look deeper into the votes, into what? The politics of Mount Kenya itself. Currently, as things are, we have two people who are perceived to be the leaders of Mount Kenya and who we can say that they are the kingpins of Mount Kenya. And that is Rigathi Gachagua, who is an impeached deputy president. And you understand what comes with an impeachment. Once you are impeached in this republic, and with the pronouncement, the recent pronouncement of the courts, it means Rigathi Gachagua is not going to step at the presidency. Let come 2027. He has been prevented by actually going for that bid because he is impeached. Any impeached person cannot hold any public office. So, but Rigathi Gachagua is perceived to be the kingpin of the entire Mount Kenya, and he's heading DCP as a political party. Second, we have Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. He's also perceived as the kingpin of the mountain, and because he has been the president of this republic, and people look upon the former president to salvage the region. And therefore, if we look at those two prime individuals, we can say that those are bulls from the mountain. But can those bulls sire politically? Can those bulls produce politically? I can say they cannot produce. They cannot stop at the presidency. And therefore, I can say that they are infertile. And the people of the mountain are holding dearly to those two political leaders without them knowing that they are having leaders who cannot help the community to stop at the presidency. And that is the biggest political blunder that the people of Mount Kenya have done as per now. Because by having Rigathi Gachagua being a very strong person in Mount Kenya, is like having a bull which cannot perform its function at the prime place. By having Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta still having the influence in Mount Kenya is by having a bull in a home, and that bull cannot produce. That is what we are trying to look at Mount Kenya. The only thing we can say about these two political giants is that they can play the role of being king makers, and those king makers will come out of the Mount Kenya space. And that is why, as I have said, it is either they fall behind, Fred Okengo Matiang'i, who is being proposed by the retired president. It is also either they fall behind Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who comes from the eastern part of this republic, from the Kamba Nation. It is also either they move to the Sifuna movement. That is what we can say. And therefore, we can categorically be able to say that the mountain as a region cannot produce a person who is going to step at the presidency, who is going to become the president of this republic if elected, let come 2027. But clearly, they have a role. And the biggest role they have is to make somebody to be the president of this republic. And that somebody must come out of Mount Kenya region. And that's why I have named those two political leaders. I have named Fred Okengo Matiang'i. I've named Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. So those are the prime leaders who can be made to be presidential candidates by Mount Kenya votes. And at the same time, I sometimes feel sorry for Mount Kenya, because that is a vote-rich region. And as you all understand, Mount Kenya being a vote-rich region, that means they can produce a president. They have the votes. The only thing is what they need is to play a smart game. But now, they have been made to understand that we have tyranny of numbers. But is that tyranny of numbers helping them as per now? Because I can say that currently as things are, Mount Kenya is like a menu which is put on the table to be eaten. And that is why, as we look at things currently, we can say that people are moving to the mountain to make them to step at the presidency and to win the presidency, probably late come 2027. And let us be a bit simpler. If Mount Kenya will make, let's say, Fred Okengo Matiang'i to step at the presidency and become the president late come 2027, it means Fred Okengo Matiang'i will be out of that that position after 10 years if we will be re-elected. And that means the mountain cannot produce a person who will become the president for 10 good years. That means their tyranny of numbers will not help them for 10 good years to produce a president. That is what things are. I was just listening to a certain professor, and that certain professor was saying that Mount Kenya has tyranny of numbers, but they don't have tyranny of mind. And what other people are using, other regions are using, they don't have tyranny of numbers, but they are using tyranny of what? Of the mind. And from that professor, he was saying that Mount Kenya has the tyranny of numbers, Mount Kenya has the tyranny of finance, Mount Kenya has the tyranny of resources. What Mount Kenya lacks is the tyranny of what? Of mind. And I think from that professor, he was trying to explain that because they don't have tyranny of the mind, that is why that tyranny of numbers is becoming like a menu, which is actually put on the table to be served, instead of Mount Kenya be part of that to sit on that table. And sometimes I was trying to think, what is this professor trying to talk about? And I come to a conclusion, probably that is very true. Because if Mount Kenya has around 5 million votes to 7 million votes, then it means they need little votes to win the presidency. And if they calculate very well, they impress other tribes. They go with a weakness with the other tribes and they tell them, please, let us come and consolidate our votes. We can win. And they impress those small communities. Then there is a very high likelihood that they can be able to win. But from that professor, he was trying to say that Mount Kenya, as things are currently, they don't have tyranny of the mind. And that is why, for the time being, Mount Kenya will be served as a menu. Ladies and gentlemen, do you agree that Mount Kenya, let come 2027, has only one role? And that role is to play the kingmaker role. And will they be able to succeed to make somebody to be the king without them coming together, without them pushing together? Please drop your comments in the comment section below. And if this is your first time to pump into this YouTube channel, I request you kindly to take a minute and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Give this video a like, share the video to your friends. And if your friends are loves of politics, then request them for us to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And with that, I say thank you. May God bless you until we meet in our next political conversation. Goodbye.